more that you read, the more things you'll know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to read. Reading has the power to open our eyes, open our hearts, and truly transform us. Welcome back to Season 2 of the Muslim Bookshelf, Islam Channel's first ever book show. I am your host, Naima B. Robert, an author, editor, book coach, but most importantly, a reader, just like you. Now, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to read. And indeed, reading and the knowledge that we gain in the process has the power to open our eyes, open our hearts, and truly transform us spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. So, are you ready to transform? Then get ready to explore the Muslim Bookshelf. Today, I'm excited to be sitting down with none other than Asim Qureshi. Brother, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Muslim Bookshelf. It is a true honor to have you here with us.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Asim Qureshi. I am the research director of the advocacy organization Cage International. Alhamdulillah, today is one of the greatest days in the history of kind of our activism here in the UK. We're talking about a group of people who went into an Israeli weapons factory. They smashed up the drones, they smashed up the quadcopters, these machines that have been killing Palestinians on a daily basis. And a jury, alhamdulillah, after weeks and weeks on weeks of this trial going ahead, and after deliberating for weeks, chose to acquit these heroes, alhamdulillah, and today we're celebrating that victory. The verdict came down today, and inshallah you'll see the scenes behind me of all of our community coming together to celebrate this amazing achievement. Alhamdulillah, we were very privileged to play a role in supporting them throughout this time. Alhamdulillah, since 2003, I've been very privileged, been very blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to work for those who are oppressed, dispossessed, who have been tortured, detained. And that's really the center of the work at Cage International. What we've been trying to do is help our political prisoners in particular, but to help anyone who's really been going through difficulty in the kind of context of something called the global war on terror. And so mostly my work has been traveling around the world, investigating cases of individuals who have been detained, who have been tortured, all without charge or trial, especially in places like Guantanamo Bay. And alhamdulillah, today we're here at yet another courthouse representing more people. Well, alhamdulillah, we're acting for the sake of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, I've always been a big reader. I love books since I was very little, would consume them non-stop. And there's something about the written word that really appeals to me. And you never really know whether or not you're a good writer. And I still actually don't know whether or not that's the case until now, but I've always found it very easy to put words to paper to help my own thoughts. And I think so much of my activism, helping other people and trying to help others, has been about trying to convey messages. And so as part of that, writing their stories became an integral part of my work. And somehow that kind of naturally led to the writing of articles, which only by Allah's fadl somehow ended up being in writing books as well. So I feel very blessed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided my hand to be able to represent the people that who have been so oppressed in this world, to inshallah hopefully make some kind of difference by sharing their stories in some small way.
We've got a lot to talk about. We have lots of books to dive into, but before we get into that, please tell our viewers, if they don't know you, who is Asim Qureshi?
Jazakumullah khair for having me. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So I'm the research director of an advocacy organization called Cage International. It's been my work for the last 23 years, which really is focused on representing Muslim political prisoners around the world and campaigning against government policies that really target Muslims wherever that might be in the world. This is really in the context of a post 9/11 environment.
Yes.
Outside of that, I'm a reader like you. and dabble in writing. Alhamdulillah.
The dabbling is more than dabbling, okay, everyone, and you will see exactly what I mean. So in that, so 23 years of doing this advocacy work, in a time where I'm sure you've been very busy because there's been a lot happening, you have managed to write several books that have come to the public consciousness, that have been part of the narrative. We've got some that just released and some that were released 10 years ago. I first came into contact with your work through A Virtue of Disobedience when I came to the launch. Tell us about the books that you've written, so from the first to the most recent.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. So the first book that I ever wrote was called Rules of the Game, and it was kind of by accident. I was in South Africa at a conference talking about our work, you know, in a very academic setting. And one of the people there, he was involved with the publisher and said, like, you know, your work's really amazing. We should turn this into a book. And so all of a sudden, I'm writing a book for the very first time as I think it was a 26-year-old.
Wow.
You know, it was a little bit more academic, but it was really the stories of the people I'd been representing up until that point, what they had been through, stories like Babar Ahmed, Shakir Amir, Afi Siddiqui, the kind of household names that we all know of. So, you know, they all form part of that story of what the war on terror was like from 2001 all the way through 2008, and all the different ways that people around the world have been affected.
Wow.
And then, you know, I took a break from writing for a while, and then it was about a decade later when I took a sabbatical year from Cage in order to just have some space to think. It had been about 15 years since I'd started that work, and so I just needed a bit of a break from being involved in the day-to-day and just read. So I read over 170 books that year.
Wow.
And alhamdulillah,
MashaAllah.
with the purpose of reflecting on the work that we had been doing.
Right.
So Virtue of Disobedience really comes out of a conversation that I'm having with those books, but also reflecting on the Quran, because I wrote the whole manuscript during Ramadan that year. And it was really in a process of thinking about my relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, thinking about our work and thinking about all this reading that I was doing, and all those three things kind of like came together in this kind of philosophical tract about what it means to be disobedient to oppression, and whether or not there's a Quranic ethical framework for disobedience. Like we always think about obedience and Islam being a religion of obedience, but is there an ethics of disobedience too? Which inshallah, you know, we're trying to now practice in real life.
We are definitely going to talk about that, because this is the amazing thing about us having this conversation at this moment in history, because so much of what you've been writing about is literally coming true now. But please continue.
Yeah, no.
So after Virtue of Disobedience.
So a couple of years after that, you know, we had been experiencing a lot this demand in the media for us to condemn things all the time. Like condemn, do you condemn black gangs? Do you condemn this terrorist group? Do you condemn that? And every single time you do a TV interview, even if it's not anything to do with the subject matter, you're always asked, do you condemn this group? And I was getting sick and tired of it. And I always refused to answer the question, like on these interviews. And I started speaking to my friends, like artists and poets and activists and academics, you know, like, how do you guys feel about this? And they were saying the same thing to me. I said, well, let's get a book together, you know. So I contacted Manchester University Press. They said, we'd love to publish something like this. And alhamdulillah, we got 20 amazing writers together, you know, all from different walks of life. And they do an amazing job of really showing not the fact, oh my God, it's so terrible that we're asked to condemn, but how you resist that temptation to condemn by making yourself feel like you belong, right? And that's the thing that we have to really resist, because there is a violence that happens to us when we condemn on somebody else's terms, which is that we're accepting the frame of who we are. So the book, in a way, you know, it tries to help people get outside of that psychological space where they're constantly looking for validation through somebody else's eyes and somebody else's frame of who we should be. I don't want to condemn based on your terms, you know, and because usually the premise of what you're asking is flawed in the first place. So that was book 3.
Yes. So tell us who was involved with that?
Oh, yeah,
who
sure.
Were some of the people that we may know?
Amazing people involved. So people like the rapper Loki, the
Loki,
poet.
I knew his name was going to come up, mashallah.
Sahima Manzoor Khan, you know, wonderful poet.
Sister,
the comedian Amir Rahman, you know, one of my favorite people in the world, Tariq Yunus, and another one of my favorite people, Fahad Ansari. Like, you know, just amazing scholars and artists and just brilliant people came together to write very intimately. And I think that's the thing, like, yes, it's an academic publisher, but one of the things I stress to them all is that we're not writing for an academic audience.
Right.
We're writing for our people, and I want you guys to reveal yourselves in the process of doing this. So actually, if you go on Google, you can just type Tariq Yunus and his essay from I Refuse to Condemn. It's one of the ones that we published online for free.
Amazing.
It's one of the most beautiful essays in the collection. I really recommend it for people.
I have a question
Sure.
related to this. So how important has it been for you to have peers? Whether it's ideological peers or intellectual peers or political peers, because to be able to have a group of friends that you speak to and you say, hey, you know, have you had this? And they're like, yes, we have, and they're able to respond in that way. How important has that been for you, do you think?
It's really central. You know, like, honestly, sometimes you do go through these moments where you're thinking you're going crazy.
Yeah.
That you read something on the internet, you see a statement of a politician, you see somebody from our own community saying something, and you're going like, this is crazy. Like, why are they saying this thing? And so then, you know, we obviously have our own, like, you know, signal groups and whatever, right? And you post it on there, and then you have friends who are very, very well versed in this entire field saying to you, no, you're not crazy. It's crazy that we're living in a world where people can get away with saying just the worst possible things, build their careers off the back of it. And so, you know, as Muslims, we're a people who require community. Yeah. And especially the space of activism can be quite lonely. Yes. Because, you know, the number of people out there who are practicing bravery are very few. And so you need people to remind you of, like, what's at stake, why we do this work that we do, why it requires a degree of thabat, well, not just a degree, why it requires a lot. And so, you know, alhamdulillah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. It's necessary. You need people around you who keep you sane.
That's what came out. And then the other thing that you said that I found really interesting is where you said, you know, these essays are for us. They're for our people. And I think in maybe academic spaces, it's quite common to write for the other. So write for the institute, the academia, you know, academic circles, peer reviewers, etc., who may not be from the community. How important was it for you that these essays not be for the other or for another person's gaze, but for what we need to hear?
I write it in my introduction. I say specifically that this isn't for anyone else other than our people. It's why I refuse to refer in the introduction to all the essayists by their surnames, which is the convention in academic writing. I refer to them, all of them, by their first name, because I say these are friends of mine. And I'm not going to write about my friends as if somehow they're like some distant person. No, this is our community. This is the community that holds me up, that holds me to account, that helps me, and so I need them. They're necessary. And so, you know, we wrote it explicitly saying that we don't care what racists out there think about the content of this book. It's not why we're writing it. And what was amazing is that once the book was released, I got so many messages, so many emails from especially university-age students from all over the world saying, we felt so seen and validated because we feel the pressure in the spaces that we occupy to constantly write and to constantly be based on somebody else's imagination of who we should be. And to be able to read that there are people who have trod this path already and who have resisted that temptation, like it means a lot. So alhamdulillah, you know, I feel if nothing else, we got that out of this book, which is really amazing.
To be not in the imagination of what people think you should be, subhanAllah. Yeah, it's a very difficult space to occupy, but alhamdulillah, Allah has given you the ability to occupy that space because it didn't stop there. So then which book came next?
So the book that came next after that was the one that came out last year, alhamdulillah. So worked on it with an amazing scholar. Her name is Dr. Wala Quwaisi. She is an expert on a number of different things, mashallah, but she's spent a lot of time working with Egyptian political prisoners. So initially the idea was kind of like write a book around like fiqh al-masajin, you know, kind of the fiqh for Muslim political prisoners. It was a bit ambitious, and you know, we kind of discussed it.
So what does that mean? Sorry, the fiqh of being a prisoner? The fiqh of being a prisoner? Imprisoned,
like many masail come up, right, that they have to face that are unique to them. Right, so for example, what do you do when water is being purposely withheld from you? just as an example of what a political prisoner might face. What do you do if you're being hung up by your wrists inside a toilet for weeks and weeks on end, like some of my clients have been, right? Like, you've soiled yourself in the underwear that they put you in, and you're up there literally by hanging by your wrists. You know nothing about what time of the day it is. What do you do in terms of the salah? What do you do in terms of anything? Can you make dhikr while you're in a toilet, for instance, right?
Okay.
So these are like the kinds of questions that we were talking about to one another based on her interviews that she had done with Egyptian political prisoners and the ones that I had done with those being held predominantly in places like Guantanamo Bay and the UK and many other prisons around the world. So initially the idea was to do some kind of like, kind of a guide for prisoners, which we felt was maybe a bit too ambitious and maybe something more scholarly needed to take place from scholars on this. But we thought, okay, let's do what we can do, which is much more our thing, which is just tell stories.
Yes.
So we interviewed many different prisoners from around the world. I focused on those who'd been held in US custody, and she focused on those held in Egyptian custody. And
how did she get access to them?
The ones that she interviewed were released prisoners.
Okay.
Released prisoners.
How do you get access to people in Guantanamo Bay? Are they also been released?
These are all released prisoners as well. Alhamdulillah. They're, everybody that we interviewed were released. Obviously, we were very careful about not re-traumatizing. So in the case of the Guantanamo brothers, where they'd already written books, I used content from their books rather than people always want like original content, but we also have to be like mindful that it takes a lot out of people to keep on re-interviewing them, and so rather than like doing the easier work, which is to call them up, because I know all of them personally and say, hey, do you mind giving me like an hour of your time to like interview all over again? I just like, well, I'll just do the hard work and reread their books and take what I need from it. So, but in Wala's case, actually, Egyptian political prisoners have not got much content out there.
I can imagine.
So she had to do a lot of her interviews, and honestly, subhanallah, we're in the process of writing together. We're sharing, different chapters with one another, and every single time she sent me a section that she had written, I just thought, people are going to read this book and they're going to say to themselves, yeah, America's bad, but Egypt is so much worse. Like the Islamophobia that comes from Egyptian prison guards is so much worse. It's so much worse.
What? How?
So, like, imagine, it's one of the epigraphs that we use at the beginning. Imagine that you're being tortured by a Muslim who says to a person who's a political prisoner, who's, detained at Rabah, that here, we're the ones who say kun fayakun.
Wow.
Right? Like, imagine the audacity.
Fir'aun kind of thing.
Yeah, just like the audacity to place yourself in the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? But just even the types of acts, and what was really interesting is that our section on torture, I split it into like normal types of torture, and the second half of the chapter is about sexual torture.
Oh my gosh.
And Wala then messaged me one day, she goes, Asim, I'm struggling here. I said, why? She said, because there is no torture that's not non-sexual.
What?
Every single evidence that I have of the torture that's used in prison, it all relates to sexual torture. And so, this is what we're left with. But the book is really interesting because it's not all doom and gloom. The stories are amazing, like the stories of people who have crises of faith and how when they read the Quran brings them out, like one Egyptian prisoner who talks about the fact that he was having this immense moment of serious crisis where he just wanted to die. And then he was like suffering for that because he was just like, well, if I'm feeling suicidal, there's something wrong with my iman. And then he reads Surah Maryam, and he reads how Maryam alayhi salam says, I wish I was dead. And it changes his mindset completely. He understands that like being in difficulty and wishing death upon yourself does not indicate that your relationship with Allah has ended. And it was such a powerful moment in the book because I think, unfortunately, there is this piety culture that unfortunately took over our dawah at certain points where, people get accused of all sorts for having like weaknesses in their faith. But you learn so much from political prisoners actually in terms of what iman looks like. They are the freest of us all, right? Because they're not confined by the dunya anymore.
I can imagine that.
Their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so pure It's unbelievable. And when you read the book, you really get a sense for how beautiful that relationship actually is. It's an immense difficulty, but they are unshackled by the dunya. And we, you know, in the dunya, we're the ones who are shackled because we're constantly making adjustments for the dunya and leaving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind. And you speak to any released prisoner, they always say, you ask them what their iman is like in freedom compared to what it was in prison. They were like, the highest state of iman was while we were in prison. Like when we came out, the dunya took over and we started becoming confused by everyday things. But while we were in prison, that's when our relationship was closest to Allah. But it doesn't mean that we present a false presentation that somehow prison is this great experience. It's very difficult.
No.
It's extremely difficult. It's a massive test.
But that's the paradox, isn't it? That in those lowest moments is where your faith can be the purest.
Absolutely.
This is how the tests work. So that's when only God can see.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is the religious experience of political prisoners.
Right.
SubhanAllah. I'm going to circle back to this because I want to know how you keep going, you and the other amazing people that you work with. But we're not done yet. What came next? We've got a new project.
I mean, technically this is an old project.
But this is true. But a new book that's come out.
Yeah.
Different to all the others.
Yes.
Different genre, different age group even.
Yes.
Tell us about the 100th murder.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair. So in 2018, I had a flight to New Zealand. It's like 50 hours both ways.
Oh.
And I had it in my head that I wanted to write a story for my three boys. You know, obviously it's, you know,
they were much younger then.
They were much younger then.
Indeed,
right?
yes.
You know, considerably younger than they are now. So this was 7 years ago now. And because it's very difficult for me to sometimes explain my work to them. So one of the areas I specialize in is that I help legal teams produce multi-generational social histories for their clients who have committed very violent crimes.
Oh, wow.
So what I help them to do is understand all the socio-political, historical, economic reasons why the violent offender that they're representing became the person that they did in the world. So we look at 2, 3, 4, 5 generations of family history, look at sexual violence, domestic violence, we look at water sanitation levels in the area that they lived in and grew up in. Like, there's just so many factors that you look at in order to understand how a person becomes the person that they are. And so and this has really gone through all of my work through, you know, since the very beginning. It's one of the reasons why I generally don't condemn violence. It's because violence is very, very complicated and it's based on the complexities of the world that we live in.
I remember in Virtue of Disobedience, you talked about generational trauma.
Right, absolutely.
And sort of on a like a community or like social, like countrywide scale, where a particular generation could have experienced, you know, extreme political hardship, and then that kind of trickles down into their child rearing, for example. I think my parents are a good example of that because they came from apartheid South Africa, which, as you know, was a very brutal system, and justice was very brutal. And in order to keep your kids safe, you had to be very hard. And my father will always say, the reason that they parented their first child the way that they did was because they only knew brutality. They only knew, you know, force and violence from the system that they had come up in. But anyway.
No, absolutely. That's exactly it. And so I wanted to write a story for them about, you know, why violence operates in the world that it does and how people become who they are and how it's a complicated story all the time. And I'd been thinking a lot about the hadith of the man who kills 99 people. He goes to a monk and asks if there's any redemption for him, and the monk says no. And he was just like, well, fine. I guess I'll do away with you as well. But then he goes to an alim, and the alim says that actually the problem is the place that you live in. There's no good in these people, and you actually have to make hijrah from these people and seek redemption in another place. And then he starts on a journey to that other place, but he dies along the way. And there's this amazing moment where, like, the angel of punishment and the angel of mercy come down, and they have to arbitrate and
argue about who gets him, who gets to deal with him.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changes the geography of the entire earth in order to forgive this person after this contest between the angels. So the most scholars, they focus on the element of never being beyond Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's redemption in relation to the story.
Yes.
But, you know, as a student of like violence and political violence, my question was always like, why did this guy...
How did he even get there? Like, what is the story? Like,
how did this guy commit like 100 murders?
Yeah.
Like, how did he kill 100 people? That's crazy. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. But he says, there's a part in the book where he says, this is me. This is who I am. After he kills the monk, he says, this is who I am. I am a killer.
Yes.
But that's an identity that he's built up over time. So the story kind of goes into that.
That's right. So it starts with the prologue of the 100th murder, and then you then go through the history and figure out, like, well, how did he come to that point? And so, yeah, really, I just used that hadith as a device.
Jumping off point.
Yeah, to construct this completely fictional world of this boy named Ashiq, and him going, ironically named, of course it means lover, but somebody who, you know, ends up in a whole series of circumstances, many of which are beyond his control, where he ends up being a tool for repression, and how he eventually, you know, finds his way through that, but how we can complicate our own. Really, that's the purpose of it. It's a very political message. Unfortunately, a lot of the stories, or a number of the stories that I use in the book, are based on real life events. So I incorporated a lot of the world that I'm familiar with, because I wanted it to be, you know, anchored by the world that we live in today. I didn't want to create the separation completely. It's not just entirely
so it's not a fantasy
mystical
novel.
or fantastical.
Right, okay.
Like, some of what people will read has happened.
Wow.
And some of the most difficult passages that they will read are clients of mine, or people that I've interviewed or represented in different ways. Wow. And that tethering I think is really central to the political work that we produce. So I'm not sure how literary the book is, and you know, I struggle to communicate with younger people and write for younger audiences. But I wanted to just write a story for my kids, and friends of mine who, you know, who are readers.
Well, what did the kids think of it?
Yeah, they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it, right? But they, in the sense that it's quite a dark book,
right?
But you know, they liked it, alhamdulillah. So you know, I guess job
done in that sense. Well, I saw some people who are not really into fiction, but they admire your work and decided to pick up the book because of that and couldn't put it down. So, mashallah, the 100th murder is out with Quillspire now.
That's right.
Alhamdulillah. But through everything that I'm hearing and just all of this work that you've, mashallah, which I have so much respect for you. We've had this discussion before, because writing a book isn't easy. It's not just, I'll write a book. It's done in 2 weeks' time. It takes time, effort. It's an investment.
Yeah.
So the fact that Allah's given you the tawfiq to be able to do this, you know, this many books, mashallah, and books that are not mainstream or kind of marketable, if you like. And I think that's really important, because I think when Muslims, I don't think Muslims write enough books as it is. I don't know whether you agree with me on that. But there's so much of our experience and our thought and our perspective that is not put down in books. So to be able to do this, and in areas that are not necessarily, you know, like it's going to be a mass market bestseller or anything, but still to have the confidence to be able to do the work, to get a publisher, and for it to be out there now in the world, it's a very, very wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and I hope that people who are watching, you know, who maybe are in a field where they've seen some things that most of us will never see. Who have ideas, who have friends, you know, who have circles where there are important conversations happening, where there are important views being shared, that they will be inspired to say, you know what, maybe we need to put something down in writing for future generations.
Yeah, I think we need more of that for sure. You know, we need our own storytellers.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many people out there far more talented than me at writing, who have very important stories to tell. And I know that, mashallah, like you helped, you know, with the 100th murder, mashallah, improved the manuscript massively, you know, which is why, you know, alhamdulillah, it's out in the form that it's in now. Jazakumullah khair. And I think that, you know, we need to just give them that confidence that they can do it.
Yeah.
It is, you know, depending on where your skill sets lie, you know, writing nonfiction, like, I'm not going to say it's very easy for me, but it's relatively straightforward.
Yes.
I do all of the hard work in advance. I have a database full of like every single quote from every book that I read.
Oh, really? Okay. So hold on.
Yeah.
Let's have a bit of a masterclass then.
Sure.
Let's break this down. So, for people who are potentially interested in, following your blueprint for those non-fiction titles, where does it start? Is it an idea?
Yeah, quite often it's just like a random thought that will come to me and I'll be like, oh, that'd be quite interesting to do or work on.
Okay. So then what happens next? What is part of your kind of workflow?
So, like you, I'm a reader, and I have a habit for a very long time of tabbing everything and anything that I find interesting in a book.
That's so good.
Now, I can't tell you what the metric of that is. It's not
it speaks to you.
It speaks
you put
to
it
me.
into a spreadsheet, or you put like a sticker on the book?
So I put a sticker into the book. Then I have a database called Think Pro.
Nice.
That I use. It's something that works for me.
Yeah.
Other people use Evernote and various other tools for their own databases, but Think works very, very well for the kind of work that I do.
Yeah.
And so I take pictures of every single quote. I upload it into my database. It's all labeled by page number, title of the book, page number, everything. Okay. So like everything, all the details of the passage are already in the title of the file.
Okay.
And I tag each quote with 3 tags about what the quote is about.
Right. So you can search them, and
so
if you're looking for one thing.
Right. So if I'm writing, for example, about police brutality, for instance, I have a tag in my database, in my tag cloud that says police brutality. I click that. Every single quote from every book that I've read then gets populated. This is amazing.
This is I'm sorry, this is so cool. This is very, especially if you are a reader, because you will have read so many things over time, and maybe those ideas will be swimming around in your head, but to remember exactly who said that in which book. Okay, so we have a database of amazing expressions, ideas, quotes, etc. Okay, then what do we do?
Yeah, and so then, like, when I start writing, it becomes very easy, because if it's on, with non-fiction, it's usually a subject matter you're writing about. So again, if it's on torture, I'm writing a section on torture. I've clicked on the torture tab.
Right.
Now the cloud tag, it also has all the other tags that I've got. So for example, if it says Egypt as well, I'll click on Egypt. So then it's only torture from Egypt that comes up.
Right.
And so then I'm writing about this. Okay. I can literally just copy and paste the quote directly into the document that I'm working on.
Nice.
So that's how my process has developed over the years, alhamdulillah.
Are you a planner when it comes to sort of anything? Okay, so let's start with an essay.
Yeah.
Let's start something a bit more manageable.
Okay.
How much planning do you do of an essay before you actually start writing, or do you just get the topic and just extemporize?
It's definitely more creative with essays.
Okay, nice.
So when I'm writing an essay, then usually ideas come to my head. I want to write about X, Y, or Z, and that's kind of like a weekly writing exercise for me, right? So that's something that's quite usual, especially in Cage's work. We're constantly commenting about what's going on in the world, so you're writing essays all the time.
Right.
And so, that's just like an idea hits you. Oh, that would be quite interesting to think about, to write about, and then alhamdulillah, just put it together.
Would you say that writing an essay is the same as writing a blog, or is there a qualitative difference?
I think it depends on the audience.
Okay.
Right. So if I'm like writing an essay for more an academic publication, then that requires a certain type of construction, much more evidence-based. But if it's more of a blog style, then it's usually much more personal. I'm like trying to speak directly. So if, like, for example, I'm writing for outlets like 5 Pillars or Islam 21C, it might be very different than, say, for example, writing for the New Arab or Middle East Eye.
Obviously, yes.
So, it just depends on the audience as well and what you're trying to get across to different people. Usually for, like, Muslim publications, I'm trying to talk directly to our community.
Yes.
So it's usually a little bit more personal.
Okay, all right. And do you recommend that for readers, writers, thinkers? Do you recommend like a weekly writing kind of challenge? I'm trying to take notes, people. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Okay. So if this applies to you, alhamdulillah. If it doesn't apply to you, let me carry on learning.
You're our senior when it comes to writing.
I think what a lot of writers struggle with. We have a lot of, mashallah, aspiring writers and writers who watch this show, is discipline.
Right.
The discipline to have a regular writing habit, whether it's an every day or an every week. That's why it's really wonderful to see and to hear from you sort of what your practice is, because it may speak to someone to say, you know what, actually.
You just have to write. The very first article I ever wrote was one of the hearings that Babar Ahmed had, where his fight against his extradition failed in the High Court. And Babar is like an older brother to me. We grew up in South London together. He's about 9 years older than me, but we always looked up to him as somebody to be really admired. He was somebody who went to Bosnia, mashallah, sacrificed his time and his efforts to be there in the middle of a genocide. What we learned about what was going on in the world really came from this young teenage guy who was telling us about, look, this is what's going on in the world. Something that I massively admired. And so when he was arrested and accused of terrorism, for me, this was the most outrageous thing in the world, because I know this person, right? Completely outrageous. And so I wrote this article about us staying the course in terms of not feeling a sense of being let down by this judgment and sticking with it. It's such a terrible article. Oh my God. I'm I hope that Allah never ever
Is it not available?
No, it's
so what
not.
should I be searching?
It's not available. We'll not be telling anybody the title either, right? In case they use the Wayback Machine to find it.
Some way of something. With the internet, nothing ever dies.
It's so bad. It really is so bad. I mean, I read it maybe a couple of years ago and I cringed.
You cringed.
I keep everything that I write.
This is normal.
And I cringed at how bad it actually was. But the thing is that the people around me at the time, they didn't criticize me. And some of them are very critical people.
Right.
They just encouraged me. They said, okay, carry on, keep on writing.
They could see it was coming from a genuine place, I'm sure.
Right, and I'm now I'm mad at them because I'm like,
you should have pulled me in.
Right. And alhamdulillah, now, I think gotten to a place where at least with my non-fiction, people, alhamdulillah, they generally like the writing style. Early on, you have this obsession with writing academically because you think that's how you
be
can
taken seriously.
prove yourself. And actually, it's so funny that the more senior I get in my field, the less academic I get.
I can imagine.
Which is so interesting because
don't you feel that you're sort of relaxing into taking up space and just feeling much more like I belong here? I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to.
But also, I'm writing for different audiences. I refuse to write for peer-reviewed publications anymore because that whole system is so exploitive of their writers. So I just refuse. I'm positioned now where I just want to write for my people. Honestly, even with my books, you kind of have to work with publishers. But if I could, I would never work with a publisher in my life.
Really?
Or I'd only work with publishers that were based on awqaf, who released the books to people, on a kind of a pittance just to survive. Because I don't, for me, I don't believe that knowledge is something that I own. Alhamdulillah, the books for me are a sadaqah, inshallah, for Cage.
Inshallah.
And I think that's what knowledge should be. And I think we have to go back to those models where we don't, all of these brilliant writers that we have, they're not constantly desperate. They're not trapped in this kind of Western system of constantly finding validation through publishers and through editors who quite often want to destroy the ethics of who you are. Even with I Refuse to Condemn, it's so funny because, for a lot of academics, they require publications to progress in their career. I don't require anything. And so, I came along and said to the publishers, I can take my book anywhere else. Every time that they wanted to kind of impinge on the identity of the book, I'd be like, I'm not desperate for your relationship. I'm not desperate for this book to exist. My risk is determined by Allah. I don't worry about this at all. And so, it's, even the way that you deal with peer reviewers then, it's just completely different. Even the co-essayists were like, my God, you're so harsh with these peer reviewers. I was like, look, I'm not going to let anybody impinge on your right to write what you want, okay? And because I don't fear the contract, alhamdulillah, it gives me a lot of freedom. So even there was one essay where the lawyers got involved and started saying, well, we're not happy about the way that this writer's written about resistance. It was Cyrus McGoldrick. Mashallah is a really good brother of ours, who wrote an essay on only, his title of his essay is It's Only Allah Who Condemns, right? So it's like a play on I Refuse to Condemn, but recognizing that actually true condemnation comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, one of the things that we were desperate to ensure was that the very pro-resistance stance that he put together in his essay, that wasn't diminished in any way. And so, I think we have to change our relationship with publishing entirely. I think we need to develop systems of awqaf. You know, in the mid-1800s, you had an office in France, in Paris, an office in London, that were literally set up just to discuss how to dismantle the awqaf in the Muslim world.
Really?
That's how central the awqaf were to our
Wow.
to our understanding of freedom and liberation.
So awqaf is the
Trusts.
plural of waqf.
Yeah, waqf,
Just
yeah.
explain for our viewers, if they're not familiar, how waqf is tied into publishing or knowledge for that matter.
So the awqaf or the trusts that exist were effectively community projects that were paid for by local people in order to establish something that was good, that would have a perpetuity, like a form of sadaqah jariyah, right? So they would take care of local needs, they would take care of public needs, they would take care of all manner of needs, and the entire concept of knowledge production and knowledge dissemination was often run through awqaf.
Okay.
What capitalism does, it comes along and says, no, you are the author and you are the holder of the knowledge and you should be paid for your knowledge, right? And it subverts the relationship between knowledge as something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us, the rizq of being able to write or being able to disseminate, that becomes then a personal act, that this is me. And it becomes almost self-congratulatory that I am brilliant, that I am the one, I think, rather than the relationship that scholars in the past had with knowledge, which is that I don't own this. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me this knowledge and I put it onto paper, it's because it was Allah that gave it to me, and I'm not the owner of that. So the very notion of copyright in relation to knowledge production is something that it subverts, I think, in some ways that relationship, and we have to find ways of turning that on its head. We have to create awqaf, we have to create publishing houses that are purely about supporting the author. So we're not like asking our writers to live on a pittance. Right? They're flourishing. They're able to take care of their daily needs, but they're just given the freedom to just write and think and be. Imagine if we freed some of our ulama, who are also great writers, to just be, without having to worry about whether or not the charity commission is going to attack their masjid, or whether or not the organization that they work for is going to be happy with what they write. That intellectual freedom is missing because we don't have awqaf anymore. And, you know, I want to see a return for that. And alhamdulillah, because, you know, none of the work that I do impacts the writing that I do. And because, mashallah, Cage, alhamdulillah, gives me a very free hand in terms of saying what I want. I work with the bravest people, you know, I would say in probably the whole of the Western world, alhamdulillah. And they never, ever stop me from saying anything that I want to. I have that freedom to just write and think and be. But most people don't have that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right?
That's
most
true.
people don't have that. And we need to create that again, inshallah.
That's true. Well, you know, it's I think a rallying cry, isn't it, for us to sort of review how we are operating and the systems within which we're operating. But if I was to call you a public intellectual, would you accept that title?
No, I don't.
No?
And the reason is that, look, I'm an activist, right? I've always been an activist. I'm here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me a specific type of knowledge for a specific purpose, which is to help the oppressed. If I learned the law, it was for that purpose. You know, my friend, like one of my best friends in the world, Fahad Ansari, and I, in 2006, we were traveling together and we had this conversation about whether or not we should become lawyers or remain activists. He has exactly the same background as me in terms of intellectually, in terms of, you know, studying everything. We hold the same political opinions. We hold the same religious opinions. If I had a twin in the way, he's the same age as me.
Okay,
right?
yes.
It's crazy. But he said that I need to go into the law. And I said, no, I want to stay in the research side of things. 20 years later, we come back together to run this Hamas case together that came out this year. And one of the things that we said back in 2006 is that we wanted to ensure that we were using what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us in order to help the oppressed. And we come back together much later on, him with a certain set of skills, me with a certain set of skills, to bring a project together. And that's how we have to view these skills that we've been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that we have an obligation to them. You are not given rizq by Allah except that it carries burden for you. And so the question for especially those of us who live in the West, those of us who live to one of the pillars that support, say, for example, Zionism in the world, how are we using our rizq in order to hold ourselves accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because say, for example, Muslim women in the UK with a university degree education, they have more rizq than 90% of Muslim men in on this earth. Like more than a farmer in Afghanistan, more than a fisherman in Somalia, in terms of their closeness to the mechanisms of violence that exist in the world, right? And in terms of the perpetration of that violence against Muslims. So the question is, with what we've been given here, what do we do with it? So this idea of like somebody being a public intellectual or whatever else, I think we have to see ourselves as public servants. That's it. We are here to do khidmah, and that's it. Not lead, not any of this stuff. You know, even I get kind of mad at this idea of like taking on leadership roles. And we're here to serve. That's it. And we have to see ourselves in that function. And I think we have to just humble ourselves to the fact that, you know, none of this is from us. If you had an idea, it was only Allah who put that idea in your head in the first place.
Absolutely.
You know, that's it. It's that simple.
And gave you the ability to be able to do anything about that idea and open doors for you and gave you opportunities. And subhanAllah, as we're recording this, you know, a lot has happened, you know, with regards to your work and your stance, really. I'm not going to name names, I guess. Anybody can search it. But all of the books that you've written and the ones we've discussed, what I see in your personal decisions is a thread that binds all of them. And that is this thread of courage. I mean, I know you don't want to hear that probably, but I just think it's incredibly courageous to do the work that you're doing. How do you stay the course?
I mean, astaghfirullah al-azim, I really don't see it as courage at all. I believe that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put you in a certain position and given you certain insights, you know, for example, I went to one of the best private schools in the UK. It taught me how to write, think, be, it even taught me how to be like almost like arrogant about, you know, the position that I hold in society. It's like crazy what those schools actually give you confidence that you never thought you would have otherwise. But at some point you realize that this is a burden. That's all it is. And the more that you have, the more burden you have as well. So if Allah taught you the law, then what are you doing with that law? Are you doing it, are you studying it, and are you acting in it just to make yourself rich? Or are you using it for some benefit? So, you know, I met with a journalist from Gaza recently, a young man, he's in his early 20s, and there was a group of us with him. All of us were between the ages of 43 and 55 in that room. For an hour he spoke at us, and we all came away humiliated, not ashamed, humiliated about, and every single person in that room is somebody that we would consider to be brave, that we would consider to be a veteran of the Muslim activism scene. And we did not say a single word to him almost throughout the entirety of the hour that he spoke to us, because what can you possibly say to somebody who has survived Gaza? And what can you possibly say about what we have done in this period of time? And this is it, right? Like, this is, you know, living here it's only courage if we actually do something. But I don't know what we've done yet, because ultimately the genocide is still taking place. And so I think more than courage, I just feel an immense sense of burden and wanting an excuse before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not being confident that I have that excuse yet. And I think that's really where I stand with all of this, that, you know, I'm just constantly have this anxiety, like nothing tastes the same anymore, nothing feels the same anymore. You know, we've been forced to watch a genocide for almost 2 years now, live streamed. Somebody dies in a mutilated way, and we see it almost instantly. How do we live? You know, when Bosnia was happening, we were watching the VHS tapes months after the violence had taken place. But this is immediate, and there's something about that really, you know, I think psychologically it's doing something to us.
I agree.
You know, Allah musta'an, like, may Allah make us better than who we are.
Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Brother Asim, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much
for I appreciate your time. Sorry
sharing with us. No, thank you so much for sharing with us of everything that Allah has given you in terms of knowledge or insight. And we will definitely be checking out all of those books. And and following your work, inshallah. I know you're active. Are you still active on X?
Yeah,
yes.
that's right,
Tell us
yeah.
where the best place to connect with you.
Follow Cage International's work, of course. You know, that's the organisation that I work for. MashaAllah, the brothers and sisters there are amazing. So they're on X and Instagram and Facebook and whatever. And yeah, I'm same places, X, Instagram. You'll find me, inshallah. Yeah, Asim Qureshi.
May Allah continue to guide you and bless you and protect you and your family. Jazakallah khairan.
Tune in to join our weekly competition. Just answer the question below and you can win our award-winning book collection. In the essays, for Asim's introduction, does he refer to the essayist by their A, first name, B, surname, C, nickname, or D, middle name? For more inspiring books, check out our weekly reading list. Fi Zilal al-Quran by Said Qutb, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas and Auguste Marquette, Enemy Combatant by Muazzam Beg.